In the distant reaches of Jurok 4, where discarded starships came to die, Dane Howrick moved through the shadows with practiced ease. The retired soldier knew the sprawling scrap dumps better than most, having spent the last decade hiding from his past among the twisted metal carcasses. Dawn broke across the horizon, casting an eerie red glow over the jagged metal landscape. The sky, perpetually tinted orange from the atmospheric pollutants, made everything look as if viewed through ancient amber. Dane pulled his breathing filter tighter against his face. Even after all these years, he hadn't grown accustomed to the acrid stench of burning circuitry and decaying synthetic materials. His routine was simple: salvage, repair, sell, survive. Today would be like any other day, or so he thought, until his scanner picked up an anomalous life sign emanating from within the hollowed-out shell of a Meridian-class transport vessel. Not many things still breathed on Jurok 4 without mechanical assistance. Curious and cautious, Dane approached, his hand resting on the pulse pistol at his hip. The ship's cargo hold was partially collapsed, creating a narrow passage that Dane navigated with difficulty. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but dust and debris until it finally settled on a small, huddled form tucked between storage compartments. A girl, or at least something that resembled one. Her skin was a pale blue, with delicate, almost translucent patches that revealed a network of violet veins beneath. Her features suggested human ancestry, but the elongated ears and faintly luminescent markings across her forehead hinted at Elysian heritage. A hybrid then, and a rare one at that. Elysians rarely interbred with other species, considering themselves genetically superior. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, reflected his light with a violet shine. She was filthy, emaciated, and trembling, dressed in rags that might have once been a prisoner's jumpsuit. Fresh blood, a startling indigo color, seeped from a gash on her shoulder. "I'm not going to hurt you," Dane said, holstering his weapon and raising his empty hands. "You're injured." The girl said nothing, pressing herself further into the corner, eyes wide with terror. Dane recognized the look he'd seen it on countless faces during the Galactic Border Wars. The vacant stare of trauma, the silent plea behind eyes that had witnessed too much. He should walk away. This wasn't his problem. The girl was clearly a runaway, and in this lawless corner of the galaxy, that usually meant trouble wasn't far behind. He turned to leave, then hesitated. The memory of another pair of eyes, his sister's before the Elysian bombardment of Colony 7, flashed in his mind. She had looked at him with such trust as he'd promised to come back for her, a promise he'd failed to keep. With a resigned sigh, Dane knelt down. "My name is Dane. I have a medical kit at my station." He spoke slowly, gesturing to emphasize his meaning in case she didn't understand. "If you want help, I can give it. Your choice." The girl remained still, her gaze flicking between his face and the exit. After what seemed like an eternity, she slumped forward, either from exhaustion or a decision to trust him. Dane caught her before she hit the ground. She was burning with fever. "All right then," he muttered, lifting her slight frame easily. "Let's get you patched up." The walk back to Dane's living quarters took nearly an hour. His station was an abandoned satellite control center, repurposed into a modest repair shop and living space. Located on the fringes of the scrapyard, it offered both proximity to salvageable parts and the security of isolation. As he laid the unconscious girl on his cot, Dane assessed her injuries with a clinical detachment honed from years of battlefield medicine. The gash on her shoulder was deep but clean, probably from a sharp piece of metal rather than a weapon. More concerning was her fever and the signs of severe malnutrition. Multiple older scars crisscrossed her arms and back, some clearly deliberate. Slave traders often marked their merchandise. Dane administered a broad-spectrum antibiotic, cleaned and sealed her wound, and set up an intravenous hydration line, a luxury item he'd been saving for an emergency. Throughout his ministrations, the girl remained unconscious, occasionally muttering in a language he didn't recognize. "What have I gotten myself into?" he asked his station's ancient AI as he prepared a simple broth. Analysis suggests a 78% probability of complications resulting from harboring an unregistered hybrid, particularly one with lesion markers. The AI responded in its flat, slightly glitching voice. Additionally, resources will be depleted by approximately 43% if the subject remains for more than. Rhetorical question, Naomi, Dane interrupted. Run a diagnostic on yourself while I'm gone. Your empathy subroutines are malfunctioning. Again, affirmative. Although I would argue that realistic risk assessment is more valuable than empathy in our current diagnostic. Now, the AI fell silent, its indicator light shifting from blue to yellow as it complied. For 3 days, the girl slipped in and out of consciousness. When awake, she refused to speak, accepting water and broth with wary eyes that tracked Dane's every movement. On the 4th morning, Dane woke to find her sitting upright, examining a disassembled power converter he'd been working on the previous evening. It's a Valkyrie series power modulator, he said, causing her to startle and nearly drop the component. Twice as efficient as standard models, but prone to overheating if you don't adjust the flux capacitor correctly. She stared at him, then back at the part in her hands. With deliberate movements, she reassembled the converter correctly and placed it on the table. You know your way around tech, Dane observed, impressed despite himself. He gestured to a bowl of synthesized protein paste he'd prepared. Hungry, the girl nodded hesitantly. As she ate, Dane noticed that her hands, though thin, were marked with the telltale calluses of someone accustomed to mechanical work. Not just a slave, then. A trained one. Do you have a name? He asked after she'd finished eating. For a long moment, she said nothing, and Dane resigned himself to continued silence. Then, in a voice rough from disuse, Rin, just Rin. She nodded. Well, just Rin, you're welcome to stay until you're healed. After that, he left the sentence unfinished. They both knew the reality of their situation. Staying in one place too long was dangerous, especially for someone clearly on the run. Rin nodded again, then pointed to the scattered tools and parts that littered Dane's workbench. You want to help? Dane asked, surprised. Another nod, this time with a determined set to her jaw. Dane hesitated. Teaching her meant interacting, forming connections, things he'd deliberately avoided for years. But having an extra pair of hands would allow him to complete repairs faster, potentially doubling his meager income. All right, he finally said. Let's see what you can do. The days that followed established a cautious routine. Mornings were spent repairing salvage tech that Dane would later sell to passing traders. Afternoons were dedicated to teaching Rin the finer points of starship maintenance, from basic circuitry to complex navigation systems. Evenings were quiet, with Dane showing Rin star charts and teaching her basic self-defense techniques, just in case, he'd said, though both knew exactly what dangers he was preparing her for. Slowly, Rin began to speak more, though never about her past. Her voice was soft but clear, with an accent Dane couldn't quite place. She absorbed knowledge with remarkable speed, often improving upon Dane's repair techniques with an intuitive understanding of mechanics that left him both impressed and slightly unsettled. You're a natural, he remarked one day, as she successfully recalibrated a tricky artificial gravity generator, a job that would have taken him twice as long. Rin glanced up, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. It was the first time Dane had seen her smile, and it transformed her face, making her seem younger, almost innocent. Had practice, she said simply. Before. Before what? She didn't elaborate, and Dane didn't press. Everyone on Jurok 4 had a before they preferred not to discuss. As weeks turned into months, the subtle dynamic between them shifted. Rin's initial terror gave way to cautious trust, then to something like companionship. She no longer flinched when Dane entered a room or moved too quickly. Instead, she would often seek him out, showing him modifications she'd made to various devices or asking questions about galactic geography and politics, subjects Dane had purposely avoided thinking about for years. For his part, Dane found himself growing accustomed to her presence. The silence of his station, once a comfort, now seemed oppressive when Rin was out scavenging. He caught himself checking the time more frequently when she was gone, occasionally scanning the perimeter for her return. It was a dangerous habit, this caring. But like rust on metal, it crept in despite his best efforts. One evening, as they shared a rare meal of actual synthesized meat, a luxury purchased with the proceeds from a particularly valuable salvage run, Rin broke their comfortable silence. "Why do you live alone?" Dane paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. He considered deflecting the question, as he had with similar inquiries in the past, but something in Rin's direct gaze made him reconsider. "It's safer," he finally said. "For everyone." "Because of the war?" Dane's jaw tightened. "What do you know about that?" "Your nightmares," Rin said simply. "You call out names sometimes. And you have military implants." She gestured to the barely visible scar behind his ear where his combat neural interface had once been connected. Dane set down his fork, appetite gone. "I was a forward reconnaissance specialist during the border wars. Part of a unit called the Phantom Division." Recognition flickered in Rin's eyes. The Phantom Division was infamous. Elite soldiers tasked with infiltrating enemy territories, gathering intelligence, and occasionally eliminating high-value targets. Their methods were effective, if not always ethical. "I did things," Dane continued, his voice hollow, "things I can't undo. When the war ended, there wasn't a place for someone like me in civilized space. So I came here." "To punish yourself," Rin observed quietly. Dane didn't confirm or deny her assessment. Instead, he stood collecting their plates. "That's enough history for one night. We should get some rest. Tomorrow's salvage run will take us to the eastern quadrant." Rin nodded, but her gaze lingered on him with an intensity that made Dane uncomfortable. Not because it was threatening, but because it contained something he hadn't seen directed at him in a very long time: compassion. That night, lying on his makeshift bed in the station's secondary control room, he'd given Rin his cot permanently. Dane stared at the ceiling, pondering the girl's presence in his life. She was healing well, growing stronger each day. Soon, she would be capable of surviving on her own. The thought should have brought relief, one less responsibility, a return to his solitary existence. Instead, it left an unexpected hollow feeling in his chest. "You're getting soft, old man," he muttered to himself. "Perhaps," Naomi's voice responded from a nearby console, "but my scans indicate your cortisol levels have decreased by 17% since the subject's arrival, suggesting reduced stress. Additionally, your sleep efficiency has improved by 22%. "I don't recall asking for a health report," Dane grumbled. "No, but as your station's AI, monitoring your well-being falls within my operational parameters." The AI paused, its processors humming softly. "The subject, Rin, appears to have a positive effect on your physiological and psychological metrics." Dane rolled over, turning his back to the console. "Run your night security protocols and stop analyzing me." "As you wish." "Good night, Dane." 6 months after Rin's arrival, the precarious balance of their shared existence was shattered. It began with an innocuous transmission, a general alert about increased activity from a criminal organization known as the Crimson Veil. They were moving through the sector, allegedly searching for stolen property. Dane knew better. The Crimson Veil wasn't just any criminal syndicate. They were the largest slave trafficking operation in the Outer Rim, specializing in rare species and hybrids. And they never abandoned a hunt, especially for merchandise as valuable as an Elysian hybrid. When he showed Rin the transmission, she went deathly still, the blood draining from her face. "They're coming for me," she whispered. "How long were you with them?" Dane asked, already mentally calculating evacuation routes and gathering essential supplies. 3 years. They bought me from a research facility when I was 13. Rin's voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a defensive mechanism Dane recognized all too well. "They trained me to repair and modify their ships. When I wasn't useful for that, She trailed off, her hand unconsciously tracing one of the scars on her arm. Dane felt a cold rage building inside him, a familiar sensation from his combat days. He suppressed it with practiced discipline. Anger wouldn't help them now. We need to move. Pack only what you need: tools, clothes, emergency rations. We'll take the maintenance tunnels to the eastern landing pad. I know a trader who might be willing to give us passage off-world. Rin nodded, already moving with the efficiency of someone accustomed to running. They were halfway through their preparations when Naomi's alert system activated. Unregistered vessel approaching from the northwest quadrant. Configuration matches known Crimson Veil transports. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. How did they find us so quickly? Dane muttered, strapping on his pulse pistol and checking the charge. Tracking implant, Rin said, touching the back of her neck. I thought I disabled it, but they must have activated a secondary circuit. Can you remove it? Rin shook her head. Not without surgery. It's connected to my spinal cord. Dane cursed under his breath. Change of plans. We need to jam the signal first. He rummaged through a storage compartment, eventually producing a small device. Neural disruptor, military grade. It'll scramble the implant's frequency, but it'll hurt. Do it, Rin said without hesitation. The device, when activated, sent Rin to her knees. A silent scream frozen on her face as electricity coursed through her nervous system. Dane caught her before she collapsed entirely, holding her steady until the convulsions subsided. I'm sorry, he murmured, genuine regret in his voice. Rin gripped his arm with surprising strength. Don't be. Keep going. Outside, the distant rumble of engines grew louder. The Crimson Veil had arrived. They fled through the maintenance tunnels, a labyrinthine network of passages that connected various stations and facilities across the scrapyard. Dane led the way, his old combat instincts kicking in as he navigated the dark corridors with precision. Behind them, explosions rocked the foundations as the Crimson Veil's enforcers breached his station. They're destroying everything, Rin gasped as they paused to catch their breath. Things can be replaced, Dane replied, checking the tunnel ahead. Lives can't. They continued onward, eventually emerging into a vast underground chamber that had once served as an emergency shelter during the planet's early colonization days. Now abandoned, it was littered with defunct equipment and the skeletal remains of long-forgotten machines. We'll rest here, Dane decided, securing the entrance behind them. The neural disruptor should keep them from tracking you for at least a few hours. Rin nodded, sinking to the floor with exhaustion. It was only then that Dane noticed the dark stains spreading across his jacket, blood seeping from a wound he hadn't even felt receiving. You're hurt, Rin exclaimed, scrambling to his side. Caught some shrapnel from one of their breaching charges, Dane admitted, now feeling the burning pain as adrenaline began to fade. It's not deep, but it was worse than he'd thought. As Rin helped him remove his jacket, they both saw the extent of the damage. A jagged piece of metal was embedded in his side, dangerously close to vital organs. It needs to come out, Rin said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. And the wound needs to be sealed. With grim determination, she used the limited medical supplies they'd managed to grab during their escape. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, first extracting the shrapnel, then cleaning and sealing the wound with a portable cauterizer. Throughout the procedure, Dane remained conscious, gritting his teeth against the pain. Where did you learn field medicine? He asked, trying to distract himself. Watch the Veil's doctor, Rin replied. Had to patch up other slaves sometimes. When she'd finished, Dane leaned back against the defunct console, exhaustion and blood loss making him lightheaded. Rin sat beside him, her shoulder touching his in a rare moment of physical contact. Thank you, she said softly. For everything. No one has ever. She trailed off, unable to articulate the depth of her gratitude. It's nothing, Dane mumbled, uncomfortable with her thanks. Anyone would have done the same. No, Rin shook her head emphatically. They wouldn't. I've seen what most people do. They take. They use. They discard. She turned to face him, her violet eyes reflecting the dim emergency lights. But you gave. You protected. You taught. Something in her expression made Dane's breath catch. It wasn't just gratitude he saw there, or the respect of a student for a teacher. It was something deeper, more complex, something he hadn't seen directed at him in a very long time, if ever. Rin, he began, a warning in his voice. I know what you're going to say, she interrupted. That I'm too young, that I'm confused, that I only feel this way because you saved me. Her hands clenched in her lap. But I know what I feel. I've had 3 years to learn the difference between gratitude and... She hesitated, then continued with determination and love. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Dane closed his eyes, a weariness that had nothing to do with his physical injury settling over him. You don't love me, he said finally. You can't. I'm twice your age. I've done things, terrible things, and you're just starting your life. I'm not a child, Rin countered, a spark of anger in her voice. I stopped being one the day they took me from my home. Age is just a number, Dane, especially for my kind. Elysians live for centuries. Did you know that? In 50 years, I'll look the same as I do now, while you'll be dead, probably. Dane finished for her, his tone harsher than intended. We're close to it. That's my point, Rin. We're different species, different lifespans, different everything. Not where it matters, she insisted, placing a hand over her heart. Not here. Dane pulled away from her, wincing as the movement aggravated his wound. You need to understand something. I didn't take you in because I was looking for whatever this is. I took you in because you needed help, because it was the right thing to do. And now, Rin challenged, and now we focus on getting you somewhere safe, somewhere you can build a real life, away from people like the Crimson Veil. Away from, he gestured vaguely at their surroundings, all of this. Away from you, Rin said quietly. Dane didn't deny it. Yes, away from me. The hurt in Rin's eyes was almost physical in its intensity, but she squared her shoulders, a resilience Dane had come to admire taking over. If that's what you want, she said, her voice strained but steady. It's what's best, Dane replied, though the words felt hollow even to his own ears. The moment was shattered by a distant explosion, followed by the unmistakable sound of access doors being forced open. The Crimson Veil had found their trail. We need to move, Dane urged, struggling to his feet. Despite his injury, his mind was already calculating their next steps. There's an emergency exit on the lower level that leads to the spaceport. If we can reach it before they seal off the sector, we might have a chance. With Rin's support, Dane navigated the complex's deteriorating infrastructure, each step sending jolts of pain through his side. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Boots on metal, the electronic whine of scanning equipment, voices calling coordinates. They reached the emergency exit just as another explosion rocked the complex. The blast threw them forward, Dane instinctively shielding Rin with his body as debris rained down around them. When the dust cleared, they found themselves in a narrow service tunnel that sloped gently upward toward the distant lights of the spaceport. Almost there, Dane encouraged, though his strength was clearly failing. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandage, leaving a trail their pursuers would easily follow. Rin saw it too. You need to rest. No time, Dane insisted. They're right behind us. As if to confirm his words, a barrage of energy pulses struck the wall near their heads. Dane pushed Rin forward, drawing his pistol and returning fire with practiced precision despite his weakened state. Go, he shouted. Get to the port. Find a ship called the Vagrant's Promise. The captain owes me a favor. Tell her Dane sent you. I'm not leaving you. Rin protested, tried to pull him along. You have to, Dane replied, his voice softening even as he continued to fire. This is your chance, Rin. Your chance to be free. For a moment, she stood frozen, torn between safety and loyalty. Then, with tears streaming down her face, she pressed something into his hand, a small communicator she'd modified. Use this when you're clear, she said. I'll find you. Before Dane could respond, Rin darted forward, disappearing into the shadowy tunnel ahead. Dane maintained his position, picking off pursuers until his weapon's charge was depleted. Only then did he follow, moving as quickly as his injured body would allow. The spaceport was a chaotic jumble of activity, with ships of various sizes and states of disrepair scattered across the landing pads. Dane kept to the shadows, avoiding the sparse security patrols and scanning the crowds for any sign of Rin or the Crimson Veil's enforcers. He spotted her boarding a small transport vessel, not the Vagrant's Promise, but a nondescript courier ship. She was alone, moving with the purposeful stride of someone who had made a difficult decision. As Dane watched from his hiding place, he felt an unexpected ache in his chest that had nothing to do with his physical wound. In the 6 months they'd spent together, Rin had become more than just a responsibility or a companion. She had become a reminder of what life could be beyond mere survival. With her curiosity, her resilience, and her unshakable belief in the possibility of something better, she had awakened parts of him he'd thought long dead. And now she was leaving, as she should, as was best for her. Why, then, did the thought fill him with such profound emptiness? Dane watched as she handed over her passage chip to the ship's security officer. In moments, she would be aboard, bound for some distant port where she could start anew. Without him, without the complicated feelings that had grown between them. It was the right thing, the honorable thing. He turned away, prepared to lose himself in the crowds and find his own way off Jurok 4. But as he did, his fingers brushed against the communicator Rin had given him. A simple device, but infused with her particular genius. A secure channel that would connect only to its twin, which she presumably carried. A way to find each other again. Dane hesitated, torn between what he believed was right and what his heart, long dormant but now insistently present, was telling him. The ship's engines were starting their pre-launch sequence. Soon, it will be too late. With a muttered curse, Dane activated the communicator. Rin, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Wait. There was a moment of static, then her voice, hopeful yet cautious. Dane? Where are you? Northwest corner of the port. By the fuel depot. He paused, gathering his courage. Don't bore that. Ship. What? The single word contained a universe of questions. Because, Dane took a deep breath. I don't know where we go from here. I don't have answers for all the reasons this is complicated. But if you'll allow it, I'd like to figure it out together. The silence that followed was the longest of Dane's life. Then, stay where you are. I'm coming to you. Minutes later, as Dane leaned against a storage container, conserving his strength, he saw her approaching, a small figure moving determinately through the crowd, her eyes scanning for him. When she spotted him, her face transformed, relief and something warmer lighting her features. You're still bleeding, she observed as she reached him, immediately checking his wound. I'll live, Dane assured her, his eyes never leaving her face. Rin, I need you to understand something. I'm not promising. I don't know what this is, but I know that watching you walk away felt wrong. Wrong how? She pressed, her hands stilling on his bandage. Like watching part of myself leave, he admitted. I haven't felt connected to anyone in a very long time. I forgot what it was like. To care. He faltered and used to articulating such feelings. To love. Rin suggested softly. Dane didn't confirm or deny the word. Instead, he took her hand in his. I'm not promising anything except that we'll face whatever comes next together. If that's enough for now. It's enough, Rin assured him, squeezing his hand. More than enough. A sudden commotion near the port's main entrance indicated that the Crimson Veil's enforcers had arrived. Dane straightened, ignoring the pain in his side. We need a ship, he said. Something fast and untraceable. Rin's eyes lit up. I might have just the thing. She led him to a small, battered vessel docked in the port's maintenance section. It was an older model scout ship, designed for speed and stealth rather than comfort or capacity. The registration markings had been crudely obscured. Where did you find this? Dane asked, suspicious. Belongs to one of the Veil's scouts. Rin explained with a hint of pride. I recognized him in the port and relieved him of his access codes while he was distracted. Despite everything, Dane found himself chuckling. You've learned more than just mechanics from me, it seems. I had a good teacher, Rin replied with a small smile. They boarded the ship just as alarms began blaring across the port. Rin took the pilot's seat with confidence, her fingers dancing across the control panel as she initiated the launch sequence. Dane strapped into the co-pilot's chair, ready to assist but quickly realizing his help wasn't needed. Rin handled the ship with the same natural skill she applied to everything mechanical. As they cleared Jurok 4's atmosphere, leaving behind the junkyard planet and its dangerous inhabitants, Dane felt a strange lightness replace the constant tension he'd carried for years. Beside him, Rin programmed a series of random jumps that would make them difficult to track. "Where to?" she asked once they were safely in deep space. Dane considered the question. For the first time in a decade, he was leaving behind the self-imposed prison of Jurok 4. The galaxy, with all its dangers and possibilities, lay open before them. "Somewhere we can start over," he decided. "Somewhere neither of us have been before." Rin nodded, understanding the significance of his words. This wasn't just about escaping the Crimson Veil. It was about escaping their pasts, the roles they'd been forced into, the limitations they'd accepted. "I know a place," she said, plotting a course into the navigation system. "A small trading post on the edge of the Verdant Nebula, far from both the Galactic Alliance and the Elysian Collective. No one asks too many questions there." As the ship's hyperdrive engaged, propelling them toward an uncertain future, Dane watched Rin's profile, illuminated by the blue light of the control panel. She was no longer the terrified girl he'd found in the wreckage 6 months ago. She was a woman of remarkable strength and intelligence, capable of making her own choices, including the choice to stay with him despite all the reasons she shouldn't. "Rin," he said quietly. She turned to him, her violet eyes questioning. "Thank you for coming back for me." Her smile, warm and genuine, was answer enough. 3 years later, a modified scout ship docked at a small repair station orbiting an unremarkable gas giant in the Verdant Nebula. The ship, now renamed Nomad, bore the markings of a licensed salvage and repair vessel, one of many that operated in the nebula's resource-rich expanse. Inside, the cramped living quarters had been transformed into a functional home. Tools and spare parts shared space with personal items, a collection of rare technical manuals, a handcrafted star chart, a small figurine carved from Jurok 4 metal. Dane Howrick, now with streaks of gray in his once solid black hair, finished securing the ship to the docking clamps. Age and experience had softened some of his harder edges, though the vigilance of a soldier remained in his alert eyes and ready stance. The wound from their escape had healed into a prominent scar, a permanent reminder of choices made and paths taken. From the engine room emerged Rin, wiping grease from her hands with a rag. She had grown into her features, her confidence evident in her easy movements and direct gaze. The haunted look that had once shadowed her eyes was gone, replaced by the calm assurance of someone who knew her place in the universe. "The flux converter's fixed," she announced. "Should give us at least a 12% boost in efficiency during the next run." "Always improving things," Dane remarked with a slight smile. "The ship was perfectly fine before." "Fine isn't optimal," Rin countered, moving to stand beside him at the viewport. "Besides, I thought you appreciated my improvements." Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of long companionship. Over the years, their relationship had evolved naturally, growing into something neither of them could have predicted that day in the scrap dump. It wasn't conventional by any standard, spanning species, cultures, and experiences, but then neither of them had ever been particularly concerned with convention. They were partners in every sense, navigating the complexities of their bond with the same determination they applied to navigating the dangerous territories of the Outer Rim. There had been challenges, Dane's nightmares that still occasionally woke him in cold sweats, Rin's lingering trauma from her years of captivity, the significant differences in their backgrounds and perspectives. But they faced each obstacle together, building a life that, while unconventional, was undeniably theirs. "Incoming transmission," the ship's AI announced. Unlike Naomi, this system was newer, more efficient, though Dane sometimes missed the old AI's idiosyncrasies. "Put it through," Dane instructed. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the weather-beaten face of a trader they'd worked with several times before. "Howrick, good timing," the trader greeted. "Just got word of an abandoned research vessel floating near the Cerulean Drift." Alliance markings, minimal damage. Could be worth a small fortune if you get there before the scavengers pick it clean. How small a fortune are we talking? Dane asked, business mode engaged. As they negotiated terms, Rin prepared for departure, moving through the ship with practiced efficiency. They'd built a reputation as reliable salvagers and skilled repair technicians, their services sought after throughout the nebula. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was honest work, a far cry from Dane's military past or Rin's years of captivity. When the transmission ended, Dane joined Rin in the cockpit, settling into the co-pilot's seat as she initiated the undocking sequence. Despite his experience, he'd long since ceded primary piloting duties to her. Her reflexes were quicker, her instincts sharper. Another benefit of her hybrid heritage. Cerulean drift, Rin mused as they pulled away from the station. That's almost 2 days' journey. Should be peaceful. Until we arrive and find every salvage crew in the sector fighting over the scraps, Dane replied dryly. Rin laughed, the sound still capable of warming something deep within him. Always the optimist. The ship hummed around them as it accelerated away from the station, slipping into the swirling gases of the nebula's outer reaches. As they set course for the Cerulean drift, Dane found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. What are you thinking about? Rin asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Just how different things might have been, he replied honestly. If I hadn't gone scavenging that day, if you hadn't hidden in that particular ship, or if you'd walked away, Rin added softly. I almost did, Dane admitted. But then I remember my sister. How I failed her. Rin reached across the console, taking his hand. You didn't fail me. The simple statement carried the weight of their shared history. The escapes, the healing, the slow, sometimes awkward navigation of feelings neither had been prepared for. They had faced bounty hunters from the Crimson Veil twice more over the years, each encounter leaving them more cautious, but also more determined not to let fear dictate their lives. No, Dane agreed, his fingers tightening around hers. That's one promise I managed to keep. They lapsed into comfortable silence as the Nomad entered hyperspace, the stars elongating into streaks of light around them. This was their life now, moving between the stars, taking jobs that interested them, avoiding both Alliance space and Elysian territories. They were, in many ways, still outsiders, belonging fully to neither of their respective species' worlds. But they had created their own world within the confines of their ship and the community of independent traders and salvagers who operated beyond formal jurisdiction. I've been thinking, Rin said as she activated the autopilot and swiveled her chair to face Dane, about our next steps after this salvage operation. What kind of steps? Dane asked, recognizing the tone she used when proposing something significant. I heard from Kel at the trading post. There's a small moon in the Terrius system with an abandoned mining facility. The company pulled out after the border dispute started, but the infrastructure is still intact. Her eyes lit up with enthusiasm. We could set up a proper repair dock there. Something more permanent than operating from the ship. Dane raised an eyebrow. Permanent sounds dangerously close to settling down. Not settling, Rin clarified quickly. Expanding. We'd still take salvage jobs, but we could also accept larger repair contracts. Maybe even hire a few assistants. Assistants? Now you're talking about building a business. Is that so terrible? Rin challenged. We've been running for 3 years, Dane. The Crimson Veil has bigger problems than tracking down one escaped hybrid. The Phantom Division was disbanded long before you left. No one's looking for us anymore. Dane wasn't so sure about that. Organizations like the Crimson Veil had long memories, especially when it came to valuable property. And military intelligence services never truly forgot their operatives, particularly those with knowledge of classified operations. But he kept these doubts to himself, not wanting to dampen Rin's enthusiasm. It's not terrible, he conceded. Just different. I've spent most of my adult life either fighting or hiding. The idea of putting down roots, even temporary ones, scares you, Rin finished for him. Concerns me, Dane corrected, though they both knew it was essentially the same thing. But if it's what you want, we can look into it after this job. Rin's face brightened, and she leaned forward to press a brief kiss to his lips. Thank you. That simple contact, casual now after years together, still sent a current of warmth through Dane. Their physical relationship had evolved slowly, cautiously, with Rin taking the lead more often than not. Her Elysian heritage made her mature differently than a human woman would have, her physical development complete while her emotional growth continued. It had been a delicate balance to navigate, but they had found their way through honesty and respect. Don't thank me yet, Dane warned with a hint of humor. This moon might be a radioactive wasteland for all we know. Then we'll wear suits, Rin replied lightly. The point is, we have options. Something more than just surviving from job to job. Dane understood the underlying desire in her words. While he had chosen isolation as penance for his past, Rin had never wanted the solitary life that had been forced upon her. She craved connection, community, things that had been denied to her first by her captors and then by their nomadic existence. Options are good, he agreed. And if anyone can turn an abandoned mining facility into a functional repair dock, it's you. Rin smiled at the compliment. Over the years, her technical skills had surpassed even Dane's. She had an intuitive understanding of mechanical systems that bordered on the uncanny, another gift of her mixed heritage, though one the Crimson Veil had exploited rather than nurtured. We could do it together, she said. Your experience, my modifications. A dangerous combination, Dane commented dryly. They spent the remainder of the journey to the Cerulean Drift alternating between planning for their potential new venture and preparing for the salvage operation ahead. The abandoned research vessel, according to their contact, contained valuable medical equipment and possibly classified data storage units that would fetch a high price on the independent market. As they approached the coordinates, Dane activated the ship's passive scanning systems, keeping their energy signature low to avoid attracting unwanted attention. The Cerulean Drift was aptly named, a vast cloud of blue-tinted cosmic dust illuminated by the radiation of a dying star. Beautiful, but treacherous to navigate without proper shielding. There, Rin pointed to a faint signal on the scanner. That's got to be it. The vessel materialized slowly as they approached, emerging from the swirling blue dust like a ghost ship. It was larger than Dane had expected, a Heracles-class research frigate, Alliance design, but at least a decade old. Its hull was mostly intact, though there was visible damage to one of the propulsion arrays. No other ships in the vicinity, Dane noted, scanning the surrounding area. Either were the first to arrive, or it's a trap, Rin finished, her expression turning. Serious. 3 years of close calls had taught them both to be paranoid. Run a deep scan. Let's see if there are any life signs or active power signatures before we dock. Rin complied, her fingers moving swiftly across the control panel. After several minutes of tense silence, she shook her head. Nothing. The ship appears completely dormant. No life support, no active power cells. It's dead in space. Perfect, Dane muttered. A giant metal coffin floating in irradiated dust. Despite his misgivings, they proceeded with the docking maneuver, attaching to an external airlock near what appeared to be the ship's laboratory section. Both donned environmental suits equipped with additional radiation shielding, a necessary precaution in the drift, even for short expeditions. Remember, Dane said as they prepared aboard, checking the seal on Rin's helmet with practiced care. We focus on the medical equipment first, then the data storage. No unnecessary risks. If anything feels wrong, we abort immediately. I've done this before, Rin reminded him gently. Several times, in fact. Humor me, Dane replied. I've got a strange feeling about this one. Armed with cutting tools, portable power units, and Dane's ever-present pulse pistol, they entered the derelict vessel. The airlock cycled with surprising efficiency for an abandoned ship, depositing them in a dimly lit corridor. Emergency lighting strips, powered by minimal backup systems, provided just enough illumination to navigate by. Main laboratory should be 2 levels down, Dane said, consulting the ship's schematics they downloaded prior to the mission. Engineering and data storage are on the lowest level. They moved cautiously through the silent corridors, their helmet lights sweeping across abandoned workstations and personal effects left behind in what appeared to have been a hasty evacuation. Clipboards with half-completed notes, cups of long-evaporated coffee, a child's drawing pinned to a console, remnants of lives interrupted. "What do you think happened here?" Rin asked, her voice slightly distorted through the comm system. "Hard to say," Dane replied, examining a sealed door with security markings. "No signs of combat or force boarding. Could have been a system failure, radiation breach, or just orders to evacuate an abandoned ship." Using a specialized code breaker, one of Rin's custom designs, they bypassed the laboratory security lock. The doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a sprawling research facility filled with equipment far more advanced than anything typically found on a standard Alliance vessel. "Jackpot," Rin breathed, moving toward a cluster of medical diagnostic units. "These are prototype neural scanners, worth a fortune to the right buyer." Dane nodded absently, his attention caught by something else, a row of stasis units lining the far wall. Most were empty, their glass coverings clouded with age, but the final unit in the row contained what appeared to be a humanoid figure. "Rin," he called softly. "We're not alone." She joined him, her light falling on the stasis pod. Inside, suspended in preservation fluid, was a young hybrid, similar to Rin in some respects, but with distinct differences. Where Rin's features showed her Elysian heritage in subtle ways, this subject's non-human characteristics were more pronounced: scaled skin patches, enlarged cranial structure, vestigial gill slits along the neck. A Myriadian human hybrid, Rin identified, her voice tight. Extremely rare. The Meridians almost never interbreed with other species. Dane examined the control panel beside the stasis unit. Life support is active, but minimal, running on emergency power. According to the logs, this subject has been in stasis for over 4 years. "Look at this." Rin directed her light to a series of labels on adjacent empty pods. "Subject 7A, Subject 7B. This is Subject 7J. There were others. A cold realization settled over Dane. This wasn't a research vessel. It was a floating laboratory for hybrid experimentation. The implications hung heavily between them. Rin herself had been born in a similar facility before being sold to the Crimson Veil. The practice was officially outlawed by both the Alliance and the Elysian Collective, but in the vastness of space, such prohibitions were easily circumvented. "We need to check the data storage," Rin said firmly. "Find out what they were doing here, who was in charge." Dane hesitated. "The equipment can wait." Rin cut him off. "This is more important." They made their way to the ship's lowest level, where the main computer core and data storage facilities were located. Unlike the laboratory, this area showed signs of deliberate damage. Console panels pried open, data crystals removed, terminal screens shattered. "Someone tried to destroy the evidence," Dane observed. "Not thoroughly enough," Rin replied, already connecting her portable interface to an auxiliary terminal. They got the primary systems, but the emergency backup would have activated during a shutdown sequence. With methodical precision, Rin bypassed security protocols and accessed the ship's backup memory core. Fragments of research logs, personnel files, and experimental data began scrolling across her device's screen. "This goes deep," she murmured, her expression hardening behind her helmet visor. "Alliance Military Intelligence, Special Research Division. They were conducting experiments on hybrid children, testing physiological adaptations under various conditions." Stress testing, Dane translated grimly. His time with the Phantom Division had exposed him to similar euphemisms for torture. The subject were acquired through various means, some purchased from organizations like the Crimson Veil, others bred specifically for the program. Rin's voice faltered momentarily before she continued. "The Myriadian hybrid upstairs, Subject 7J, was showing promising results in accelerated healing and underwater adaptation trials." "Why was the ship abandoned?" Dane asked, scanning the surrounding area for any additional data storage units they might salvage. Rin continued scrolling through the fragmented logs. There was an incident. Subject 7H escaped containment and damaged critical systems. The lead researcher ordered emergency evacuation and ship quarantine. She looked up, meeting Dane's eyes through their visors. They left Subject 7J behind because the stasis pod couldn't be safely disconnected during the crisis. The pieces clicked together in Dane's mind. They abandoned a living test subject rather than risk delaying their evacuation, or risk exposing their illegal research, Rin added bitterly. The date stamp on these logs. It coincides with a major Alliance policy shift regarding hybrid rights. If this research had been discovered, a distant sound, metal striking metal, interrupted their conversation. Both froze, listening intently through their suit communications. "We're not alone," Dane whispered, drawing his pulse pistol. Ship scanners showed no life signs. Maybe something reactivated or Rin began, then stopped as another, closer sound reached them. Footsteps, moving with deliberate stealth. Dane motioned for Rin to download whatever data she could while he took up a defensive position near the entrance. Years of combat experience allowed him to control his breathing, to become part of the shadows as he waited. The figure that appeared in the doorway wore an environmental suit similar to theirs, but with distinctive modifications, reinforced joints, weapons attachments, and a faceplate tinted so dark it was impossible to see the wearer's features. Not a random salvager then. Someone professional, military, or worse. Dane remained motionless, waiting until the figure moved further into the room before making his presence known. "That's far enough," he said, his pistol aimed steadily at the intruder's chest. "Identify yourself." The figure stilled but showed no surprise. "I could ask you the same," came a voice through the suit's external speaker. Female, with the clipped precision of someone used to giving orders. "This vessel is Alliance property. You're trespassing in a quarantined area." "Funny. The Alliance abandoned this ship 4 years ago," Dane replied. "Salvage laws are pretty clear about derelict vessels in neutral space." "This ship and its contents remain classified," the woman countered. "I'm authorized to use whatever means necessary to secure them." Behind him, Dane heard Rin disconnect her device, the data transfer complete. The sound drew the intruder's attention momentarily, enough for Dane to notice her hand moving toward a concealed weapon. "I wouldn't," he warned. "My trigger finger gets itchy around people reaching for hidden guns." The woman slowly raised her hands. "You don't want to make an enemy of the Alliance? Salvage her." "The Alliance doesn't conduct illegal experiments on hybrid children," Rin spoke up, moving to stand beside Dane. "Or does that policy only apply officially?" Even through the tinted visor, Dane could sense the woman's shock at Rin's appearance. Another hybrid, walking free, speaking accusingly. "You don't understand the complexities of the situation," the woman said after a moment. "Those experiments were conducted to better understand hybrid physiologies for medical advancements that could benefit all species." "Save the propaganda," Dane cut in. "We've seen the logs. You're here to erase evidence, not recover research." "And Subject 7J?" Rin demanded. "Are you here to recover or erase them too?" The woman's posture changed subtly, a tightening of shoulders, a shifting of weight. "Subject 7J is Alliance property. Its condition is none of your concern." The casual dehumanization in the woman's words, referring to the hybrid in the stasis pod as it, sent a ripple of anger through Dane. Beside him, he felt Rin go rigid. "That property is a living being," Rin said, her voice deadly quiet. "Left to die alone when your researchers fled." "A regrettable but necessary decision at the time," the woman replied. "Now, I suggest you both leave while you still can. My team will be arriving shortly to secure this vessel." Dane exchanged a quick glance with Rin, an entire conversation passing between them in seconds. They had come for salvage, but found something far more significant. Evidence of Alliance atrocities and a living victim who might still be saved. "We'll be leaving," Dane confirmed, his weapon still trained on the woman, but not empty-handed. The confrontation that followed was brief but intense. The Alliance operative was skilled, military-trained, possibly special forces, but Dane's combat experience gave him an edge in the confined space. When it ended, the woman lay unconscious, securely bound with equipment cables and relieved of her weapons and communications devices. "We don't have much time," Dane said as they hurried back to the laboratory level. "If she has a team coming, they could arrive any moment." "We can't leave Subject 7J, Rin insisted. "The stasis pod has a portable power supply. We can transfer it to our ship." Under normal circumstances, Dane would have argued against taking such a risk for an unknown factor. But these weren't normal circumstances, and this wasn't just any salvage mission. This was about doing what he had failed to do too many times before, saving someone who couldn't save themselves. Together, they disconnected the stasis pod from its moorings and activated its portable power system. The unit was heavy, but manageable in the ship's artificial gravity. They made their way back to the airlock, constantly alert for signs of the operative's backup team. Once aboard the Nomad, they secured the stasis pod in the cargo hold, connecting it to their ship's power supply. Only then did Dane allow himself to breathe normally again. "We need to get clear of the drift before her team arrives," he said, already heading for the cockpit. Rin followed, but her thoughts clearly remained with their unexpected passenger. "What do we do with Subject 7J? We can't keep calling them that. It's dehumanizing." "First, we get somewhere safe," Dane replied, initiating the undocking sequence. "Then we figure out if we can safely bring them out of stasis. After that, we let them decide their own name, their own path." As the Nomad pulled away from the derelict research vessel, Rin reached for Dane's hand. "We're doing the right thing." It wasn't a question, but Dane answered anyway. "Yes, we are." And for the first time in a very long time, he felt the weight of his past lift slightly from his shoulders. The data Rin had downloaded would be valuable, not as salvage to be sold, but as evidence of crimes that needed to be exposed. And the hybrid they'd rescued represented something even more precious, a chance to right a wrong, to save one life from institutional cruelty. They set course for a secure location Dane knew from his military days, a small, uncharted asteroid base used as a Phantom Division safe house. Long abandoned, it would provide the perfect place to assess their situation and determine their next steps. As the Nomad entered hyperspace, leaving the Cerulean Drift and its secrets behind, Dane watched Rin at the controls. She piloted with confidence, her earlier enthusiasm about establishing a repair dock temporarily set aside in favor of their more urgent mission. Yet even in this moment of uncertainty, he saw in her the same determination that had drawn him to her from the beginning. The refusal to accept injustice, the courage to challenge a harsh universe. 3 years ago, he had found her hiding in the wreckage of a ship on a junkyard planet. Now, they were partners, lovers, and, though he had never anticipated it, crusaders against the very systems he had once served. Life had a strange way of bringing people full circle. "You're staring," Rin observed without taking her eyes off the navigation console. "Just thinking," Dane replied. "About what?" "About how finding you in that scrap heap was the best thing that ever happened to me." Rin turned to him then, her violet eyes softening. "Even with all the complications? The Crimson Veil, my feelings, and now this." She gestured toward the cargo hold where their unconscious passenger lay suspended in stasis. "Especially with all that," Dane said firmly. "Life was simpler before you, but it wasn't better." It was perhaps the closest he had ever come to directly addressing the love that had grown between them, a love that had evolved from protection to partnership to something deeper, transcending the boundaries of age and species. Not conventional by any standard, but genuine in its complexity. Rin seemed to understand what remained unspoken. She leaned across the space between their seats and pressed her forehead to his, an Elysian gesture of intimacy that she had taught him early in their relationship. "We'll figure this out," she promised. "Together." And in that moment, despite the uncertainty ahead, Dane believed her. They had navigated worse odds before. The path forward might be dangerous, but they would walk it side by side, two outsiders who had found belonging in each other's company. The Nomad continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying its crew of 2 and their unexpected passenger toward a future none of them could have predicted. A future where salvage parts became second chances, and broken things found new purpose in being rebuilt.